everybody, welcome to QWR Nature News. Today we want to talk about something that we're getting a lot of calls about right now, and that is what to do when you find a baby animal. So we think at this time, especially right now, everybody is outside in their yard, you're doing a lot of yard work, you probably see birds nest in the trees, maybe you find a baby animal in your yard. So each of us is going to talk a little bit about what to do when you find certain kinds of baby animals. But we also want to mention that although we house animals here in our outdoor wildlife complex, they're permanently injured animals and they live here and we care for them, but we are not a wildlife hospital. So we're not a wildlife rescue center. So if you do find a baby animal, you're always welcome to call us and we will give you advice and we'll tell you the nearest rescue center to you. We're always happy to help with that, but we do not accept baby animals or injured animals here. But you can always give us a call and we will help you, or you can check out our website, quagwildliferefuge.org/help, and that will give you a list of all the rescue centers on Long Island, and tell you where you can bring injured or baby animals. So first, we're going to have environmental educator Kara here, who's going to talk to you about what to do if you find a baby bird in your yard. So
Okay, so I think one of the best signs of spring is really when you start to see baby animals and birds are migrating back to Long Island. So now is the great time to look for nests, and maybe in your backyards you can look around and see what kind of birds you have. But we get a lot of calls about baby birds and what to do if you find them. So I wanted to first just talk a little bit about how baby birds are born. So most birds have either two different strategies for when their chicks are born. They're either born altricial or they're born precocial. So the altricial baby we can start with. This is a strategy for lots of birds like raptors and pigeons and robins, and their babies are born undeveloped. So these are the little guys that you'll see with no feathers. They're pink, their eyes kind of are not open yet. So these guys are totally dependent on their parents, the altricial babies. And precocial babies, just like a ruffed grouse, this is a one-day-old meadowlark. This is a one-day-old ruffed grouse. So you can see that these strategies, when a precocial bird like the ruffed grouse hatches, they are really well developed. They can leave the nest within 1 to 2 days. They can basically walk once they hatch from their egg. So we see all these different types of birds on Long Island. Very cool, but you can see they all have different strategies for this. So parrots, songbirds, those babies are born altricial, which means that they're not very developed. But gulls, ducks, and geese, and ostriches, those birds have babies that are precocial. So they're ready to follow mom and dad within just a few days. One really common bird that we'll see all across Long Island is a robin. How many of you guys have seen robins in your backyards when they're nesting? So I bet all of us have, which is really fun. As you can see, robins, their babies are born without any feathers. Their eyes aren't open. So they need parental care for about 2 weeks before they can turn into a fledgling. But when you find baby birds, though, it's really important to look for those things. Does the baby bird have feathers, or is it completely naked and pink? So those are things you want to look for. You can observe them first. And I have this really great reference from the Southeastern Utah Wildlife Foundation. But first you want to observe the bird and see if they have an obvious injury. Do they have any broken bones that you can clearly see? That bird needs help, right? But if there's a nest nearby and it looks like you know exactly where they come from, then there are certain things you can do to help them. So you want to make sure, number one, that the area is safe before, are there other birds around? Are there pets around? That's another important thing to look for. And if it is an immediate danger, then we're going to share some things that you can help a bird. But always the best thing to do is observe and then call a wildlife rehabilitator and see if they can help you with anything in regards to that before you intervene, because that's always important. You want to leave all of these birds wild. So if you find a bird like these little guys, these ones, if you find on the ground a bird like this that's not hopping around, can't fly, that's when you might want to help them. So if you see a nest nearby, you can pick up the baby bird and put it back in the nest. That's basically the best thing you can do. If it's injured, then you would call a rehabilitator. You could put it in a cardboard box with holes in there and then immediately call a rehabilitator. Don't try to feed these guys because they receive a really special diet from their parents, and although we want to feed them, it usually makes matters much worse. And old wives' tale actually is that if you pick up a baby bird, you get your smell on it and then the parents will reject them. That's actually not true. So birds don't have a very well developed sense of smell. So you can pick up the bird really gently and just put it back in the nest. If you can't find a nest, one thing you can do is put a little strawberry container, try to make a nest and put it up in a tree as high as you can, and hopefully the parents will come back. If you see a bird like this, though, this is about 2 weeks after this stage for robins. This bird is a fledgling, and it takes around 2 weeks for robins to fledge from the nest and leave the nest. They're just like teenagers of the bird world, right? So they're hopping around. They might be on the ground. They have their feathers. And fledglings, their parents are coming back to feed them lots of good food. So this is when we never want to intervene with a fledgling bird because they're learning how to be a wild bird. Their parents are still feeding them and they're doing exactly what they're supposed to do. Of course, if it's injured, then you can call a wildlife rehabilitator. But for fledglings, you definitely always want to let them do their thing. If you have a backyard where maybe you have a cat or dogs, the best thing to do is to keep them on a leash or keep house cats inside during this time of year, because that will help protect all of those baby birds that are fledging from the nest and just learning how to be a bird. So those are really important things too. If anyone has any questions, feel free. I'm going to check out and see if there's anything. Oh, Melissa has some baby robins in the front yard. That's exciting. And I see Lee has lots of different nests, robins, red-winged blackbirds, cardinals. So that's really cool to look for too. That's awesome. So again, if you find a fledgling and it looks like it's a little confused, one thing you can also do is move them to underneath a bush in the same area. You don't want to take them out of their environment, but you can move them to a safer place. But remember, it's always important that they go to a wildlife rehabilitator if they are injured or sick. Very important. And how long do birds live? That's a great question, Christina. It depends on the bird. So some birds have a lifespan between 5 to 10 years, but other birds like albatross, which unfortunately we don't really have here on Long Island, but they can live up to 60 to 80 years old. So some birds live a really long time. Some have shorter lifespans, but very cool, I think, to watch. I'm a big bird nerd, so I hope you guys are too. If you have any questions about when you find baby birds, what to do, feel free to leave them in the comments. We can check on that. But again, the best thing is to enjoy them, observe from far away, but try never to take them, especially if they are a fledgling. It is illegal to ever keep any wild animals in your house or as a pet. If you find an injured one, always call a wildlife rehabilitator. So we're gonna move on to our next species. If you find a baby this, so it's coming up right now.
Okay, so birds are not the only animals that are making nests at this time. Another really common animal that you can find right around now is the baby bunnies. So our native bunny species is the eastern cottontail rabbit, and they nest from about this time to September of every year. So you can find these nests, all throughout the summertime. And they happen to nest really in like borderland areas. So they're often found, you can often find their nests in yards or in meadows, or even in fields. And what they do is they just nest in these really shallow depressions, and they cover them up loosely with leaf litter and fur and grass. So you often can't really tell that they're there until you're almost stepping right on top of them. So people often find them when they're doing yard work, gardening, or mowing. And if you let your dogs out in your backyard, a lot of the time the dog will be attracted to the nest. So you might find something like this in your yard. So they're really tiny. They often give birth to about 4 to 5 young, and they can have several nests a year. So they're really little. And so if you do find a bunny nest in your yard, something to keep in mind is that the mother will really only visit the nest 2 times a day, and that's at dawn and dusk. And that's because they nest in the open, so she really doesn't want to be attracting any predators to her nest that are perhaps flying overhead. So don't assume that the mother is dead or missing, because chances are she's nearby. Maybe she's watching you, and she just doesn't want to put her babies in danger. So if you do find one and you're nervous, you can always keep an eye out, and there are a few things you can do to check to see if the bunnies are okay. So number one, if you see a nest and you see any flies buzzing around it, that's a bad sign. So that would be, maybe an indicator that you should call a rescue center. Another thing would be that you can check to see if they're dehydrated. So really only do this if you are worried that the mother is missing. But what you can do is gently pinch the back of the baby's skin, kind of like this. Now, with humans, this works too. So if you are not dehydrated, your skin will snap right back. If you are dehydrated, it will kind of buckle and stay there for just a few seconds. But that's a good indicator that you should drink water, or that the babies haven't been visited by their mom in a little while. So that's another thing you can do. Their nests can be repaired, so if it's in your backyard and you find that your dog has kind of messed up their nest, or maybe you accidentally messed it up when you were gardening, you can kind of just cover it back over, and the mother should return. One thing to keep in mind is they won't reject their babies if they are touched by human hands, but it's always good to keep your hands clean. If you just put on a scented lotion, or have any strong scents on you, it's good to just wash your hands before you're going to go ahead and do that. So baby bunnies, eastern cottontail rabbit. So my final thing to say about rabbits is that when they get to be about this size, you can see their ears are up. If they're about 4 to 5 inches and you see them hopping around on their own in your backyard, that means they're fine to be on their own. So they're really tiny, they're super cute, and they look very much like babies still, but you can see they've developed quite a bit from this when they're in their nest and they need to be fed by mom. So at this time, they're hopping around, eating grass, living on their own. So if you find any guys like this, as long as they don't look injured, like Kara said about the birds, no visible injuries, no flies, they should be fine to be on their own. And it's a great sighting to see them. They are super duper cute. So I want to mention one other mammal. So lots of things are nesting right now, something we're getting calls about every single day. These are baby raccoons. They are super duper cute. And these guys often nest in human structures. So you might find them in your shed or underneath your shed, maybe in your attic. So these guys, they'll nest for about 4 to 6 weeks. And something we always say is if you can be tolerant of them and you can, maybe just keep your dogs on a leash for a couple of weeks if they're underneath your shed. It's always best to do that. Even with bunnies or things like that. Wild animals should be wild. And their chances of survival really go down if their nest is moved. So baby raccoons, this is what they'll look like a few weeks from that, and they are really adorable. So something we want to say is that you should never attempt to rehabilitate a wild animal on your own. Even if it's a little tiny bunny or a raccoon, they look really cute, and I could see why you would be tempted, but they are wild animals, and especially raccoons. They can be a rabies vector species, and they can be aggressive. So it's always best to call a licensed wildlife rehabilitator if you find these guys and they've been separated from their mom. And don't always assume that if you see a baby animal, it is on its own, because often the mother is nearby. And like I said before, we are not a rescue center here, but you can always call us and we will direct you to the proper place. We have licensed humane wildlife trappers we can refer you to if you have an animal problem. So let's see, have we had any questions at all? Does anybody have any questions about any baby mammals? Has anybody found bunnies in their yard yet this year? You have? Oh, good job. Thank you, Kara. So now I'm going to pass you guys along to Renee, who's going to talk about another critter that we see this time of year quite often. So thank you.
All right, hello everybody. So I'm going to talk to you about reptiles, but actually more specifically, I'm going to talk about turtles. So a lot of people this time of year are seeing turtles. What's actually very interesting is the turtles that you're seeing right now are actually, the majority of them are hatchlings from last year. So turtles will lay their eggs between usually May and July. And what will happen is in the fall, they'll typically actually hatch from the eggs and they'll overwinter in the nest. So right now, as it gets warmer, they are coming out of the nest, but those little turtles, they survive the whole winter already. So when they come out, they're usually only about the size of a quarter, and I'm going to show you some images of that right now. So they're very, very small. And people are often surprised that they are able to survive, but they do. Turtles have been around for a really long time. Snapping turtles, for example, have been around for 90 million years, and they figured it out, right? They make it work, and they survive, and they've survived that much time. So keep them wild, right? So not only are we finding baby turtles right now, but sometimes you might find some live or adult turtles as well. But let's talk about baby turtles first. So not only from size do you know it's a baby turtle, but you know it's a newly hatched turtle if you see something like this. Oop, it's hard to orient my finger. There we go. I'm going backwards in the camera. Right like this. This right here on the top of the beak is an egg tooth. So that is actually can you see this fly through the camera right in front of the lens? This is actually how they get out of their egg. So they have this small egg tooth right when they emerge, and that will kind of stay on the front of their beak just for a couple days. So they are very newly emerged from their shell, or from their egg, excuse me, if they have their egg tooth. I have another little image, might be able to see a little bit better. Sorry about the glare, but you can see the front of this right there. There's your egg tooth right there. So that will fall off after just a couple days. So that is an example of one of the young ones. A lot of the time, so most of our turtles are aquatic, but there are some terrestrial species like the box turtle. So typically these guys will actually only make their nest, so they spend most of their time in the water. They'll usually only emerge or be on land during the nesting periods. So at that time, they'll come usually about 100 feet from the water, but sometimes further. They've found snapping turtles nesting over a mile from their original pond that they've come out of. So they can kind of take these really dangerous routes. They sometimes cross over roadways and into other areas, and it could be a dangerous time for them when they're making this commute to find their favorite preferred nesting sites. So it's really important to be careful during this time. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what to do if you find them during this nesting season, but I want to first show you some examples of some babies that you might find, because a lot of the time people want to take these and right away put them in the water, but not all of them are aquatic, right? Because we do have the eastern box turtle. Let me pick that picture. They look kind of similar, all of these baby turtles, so they might be a little bit hard to tell apart. So this is your eastern box turtle. Not a ton of distinguishing markings when they are small, but if you've seen an eastern box turtle as it grows up, a lot of them have very yellow shells, orange shells. They vary a lot in their coloration. But here's a small box turtle. This one right here. some of you might be familiar with. This is a painted turtle or an eastern painted turtle. And some distinguishing characteristics of these guys are these really yellow markings on their head, and they have these orange colorations on the edges of their shells as well as kind of the inside of their shell and the underside. So all of these guys like a quarter in size, very, very tiny. So they're hard to spot too. And then this is a baby snapping turtle, right? So you can see that kind of sawtooth edge on the back of their shell for the snapping turtles, and a really, really long tail too. So that's how you can tell the difference. So what to do if we find a turtle that's not a baby, right? Kim has a example. Here we go, like this, right? Some of you may see lots of these guys, or ladies most likely, crossing the road at this time of year. This is a male actually right now, but we're gonna talk about mostly the females that they're holding eggs inside of them and making their way to their favorite nesting spots. But this is an eastern box turtle. So a terrestrial species, meaning it lives mostly on land. You guys might remember meeting this guy during some of our turtle talks. But box turtles will often make their way across the road, find their favorite nesting spot during this time of year. So what to do if you find a turtle crossing the road? First and foremost, it's really important to make sure that you are keeping yourself safe. Because you don't want to put yourself in danger or others in dangers that are in their vehicles too. But if you find a turtle crossing the road and it is safe to get out of your car, what you can do with a box turtle is you can simply help move the box turtle across in the direction that they are trying to move. So turtles are very stubborn and they know where they want to go. So it's very important to move them in the direction that they're going, because if you turn them around and move them back to the other side, it's just going to try to do the same thing over again. So it's really important to move them where they want to go. It's also very important to not move them out of their habitat. Don't take them in your car and drive them somewhere else, because these guys live in the same area their whole lives. They know where the best water is, they know where the best food is, they know where the best nesting sites are. So they also can be very territorial to one another. So it's really important to keep them in their territory, in their space. Don't move these guys. Same thing if you find a baby turtle. Don't move it away from that space, because there is obviously a suitable habitat in that area for that animal to live, because that's where its parents came from. So that's a good space for it. And everyone's so nervous when they find these teeny tiny things. How are they going to survive? They have for 90 million years. So leave them where they are, right? Or help them cross the street. Sometimes you might also find a turtle like this crossing the street, right? What should we do if we find one of these? This is a snapping turtle, right? So snapping turtles are built for water. They've got flippered feet. So they are not as great at walking on land. They're very vulnerable when they're on land. So it's important to make sure you don't approach these guys and make them feel uncomfortable or nervous, because what do, right? They snap. So snapping turtles have really strong beaks. They're unable to hide their head in their shell. Their head is too long, their feet are too long to fit inside their shell, so they snap to protect themselves instead of hiding away, especially when vulnerable on land. So if you need to help one of these guys cross the street, actually I'm going to pass off our box turtle so I can show you a little better. Thanks, Kim. Their neck can come back very, very far. So make sure, kids, make sure you have a parent doing this, or if you have something in your car that you can kind of just, or maybe even a sheet that you can just kind of nudge or just kind of make the turtle decide to move forward, just kind of steer them where they should go. That's best. If you don't have to touch them, that's really good. Maybe you have something you can kind of nudge along the back of them with just to get them moving into a safer spot. But if you absolutely have to pick up a snapping turtle, you don't want to hold them from the sides, because this neck can come back and get you. You're going to hold them from the back of their shell, never from their tail. These guys, their tails are attached to their vertebrae. Their tails are very important for swimming, and you never want to damage any of these vertebrae, right? So hold them onto their backs and help them cross this way. They do have long nails though too, so just be very careful, very, very careful. But never moving these guys out of their natural habitats, right? Keeping them in the spots that you find them is most important, right? Sometimes you might find a turtle that's hit by a car, has a damaged shell. That's the time you're going to contact a rehabilitator or a turtle rescue or a wildlife rescue organization. And us at the refuge, you can give us a call and we can direct you to an organization like that. I'm just going to look if we have any questions too. I think if anybody has any questions, we'll answer some questions at the end too. So type them up if you have anything to ask. All right, I'm going to pass you to our next educator.
All right, how's everyone doing at home? You get all the educators today in one day. This is awesome. So think of those questions if you have them, because this is a very important topic we're talking about today. A lot of people during the springtime always deal with this issue as far as finding these baby animals. They don't know what to do. And we're here to try to educate you, but also hopefully plant the seed that you can educate other people about these different animals and what you can do to help. Right now, we are also dealing with another type of mammal that people see once in a while out there that needs rescue, and that is let's see if you guys can guess this species. All right, what do we have here? All right, very good. We have the Virginia opossum. This is a very common mammal here on Long Island, and a lot of people get a chance to see these animals usually at night because they're nocturnal. But this is a creature that is very special here on Long Island because it's the only marsupial that we have on this area at all. So this is a creature that we want to understand, get to know. A lot of people are like, oh, I don't like opossums because of their tail, whatever. But this is a mammal, not a rodent. And it actually deserves a lot of our respect in many ways. Unfortunately, these mammals we find on the side of the road a lot of times. And this is horrible because they're not a fast-moving animal. They get hit on the side of the road continually. It's usually when we see them the most. But we definitely need to do our part to help them. So just to go over a couple of cool things. A female opossum, if you find her, is called a Jill. A male is called a Jack. And the babies are called Joeys. So all J's in that. And what's amazing is that the female can actually have up to 20 joeys in her litter, which is absolutely incredible for a mammal. The interesting part is when she has those joeys, they're born about the size of a jelly bean. So it's about that tiny. And they'll actually climb up and immediately find their way up to her pouch, right? She's got that little skin pouch that they find their way into, and they develop over time. So having a marsupial on Long Island is awesome. What are some other marsupials you can think of at home that are called joeys especially? So the sad part about these animals is they have probably the lowest lifespan or smallest lifespan out of any mammal. They only live to about 2 to 4 years. So we really want to do our part to help them out. When we do find one, a lot of times if it's found on the side of the road, a lot of people forget the fact that they're marsupials. So when someone is doing a rescue, they forget to check the pouch. So people that are trained for this should be doing this. Their pouch sometimes still has live babies inside. And we actually had one of our favorite creatures here at the refuge named Princess. She was found that way. She was found in her mom's pouch. The mom was found hit on the side of the road, and she was the only survivor. So someone who's doing opossum rescues has to remember that. With these joeys, usually when they do start to develop, they'll stay with their mom for about 100 days. And when they do, you'll find them clustered like that. That is one busy mom right there. So that's about 8 babies clustered on mom right there. She has to carry them around through the trees. And luckily they can hold on to mom with these really tight gripped hands. They have the opposable thumbs, right? And they also have prehensile tails that help them to grip and stay close. Now, if one is found, these little creatures, they have a defense system, right? Whether they're adults or babies, they can do what? Anyone know what that's called, what opossums do? Everyone knows this famous type of defense system. Hopefully we don't try this at home. It's called playing dead. And officially they've realized that these creatures can play dead for up to 6 hours if needed. So that means even though you think you might have found a dead opossum, it could be them actually playing dead on that. But again, with a creature like this, we don't recommend anyone doing any rescues of babies or adults on their own. You should definitely call an experienced rehabilitator or an animal hospital close by, because they have the right equipment, including thick gloves. These creatures have over 50 teeth in their mouth, the most out of any mammal, and they're very sharp. They also, will hiss and get aggravated if you get near them. So the best thing to do is give them their space, step back, let them relax, don't stress them out any further, and call someone that can come down and help. Now, visual signs, of course, are bleeding or open wounds, any broken limbs that you'd call for help. But other than that, sometimes mom might drop a baby and come back to get it. Or it's been separated. A lot of people have dogs and cats that attack these poor creatures, and they get separated that way. So sometimes giving them a little time, letting mom find her way back, that's a good way to do it as well. Anybody love opossums out there? I hope so. I definitely hope so. So with these, this is going to bring us right into our next creature, which is the white-tailed deer. Who has deer in their backyard or at home at all? So this is a baby what? Anyone know the name of this one? Please tell me you do. All right, so this is a fawn. The male is the buck, the female is the doe. And what the babies do is they are born with their special camouflage. And you can see those white dots. This is a mammal that's designed to stay out in open fields or in the woods, or sometimes they're left on your lawn because mom has to go out and feed also. They usually have 1 to 3 babies. And right now is the main time that they're being born. So from April through July, but June is the highlight time when these babies are being born. So keep an eye out. The biggest mistake is people think they need to help these fawns because they're left alone. That's not true at all. Mom does not stay with these babies the whole time if they can't keep up. She'll leave them sitting in the woods, sitting in those fields or grass or your lawn, and she'll walk away to go find her food. And if she smells any predators whatsoever, because they have a great sense of smell, she will come back sometimes hours later if necessary. So dawn and dusk, they're active. That's called crepuscular. And they can be very crepuscular in the way that they do their feeding. So they'll sometimes leave. They'll feed them in the morning and then come back in the evening to feed their babies. So just keep that in mind. It's illegal to keep any creatures as a pet, as Kara was saying. Over 24 hours in your house and you've broken the law. So the best thing to do is, again, leave them where they are, give them space, don't get close to them. These animals do have a great sense of smell, so you do not want to touch them at all. And call the right people to take care of them. Now, again, if you see them in the road, if they get hit by a car or anything else, you want to make sure that animal stays safe, but you want to make sure you're safe as well. So we had a rescue right on the road. We had blankets to basically put around the fawn and move safely out of the road while someone was directing traffic. So this is something you want to make sure, if you can have the officials do it, definitely do that for sure. Another thing is don't feed them. Many people think it's my job to feed them or give them water. Well, you're infringing on their natural way of living, and mom is not going to appreciate that either. So leave them be. Don't feed them or give them water if they're there. And again, wait for a rescue center to come down and do that work if necessary. If there's any questions on this, let us know. But there is one thing. It's called fawn kidnapping, and it happens right now through the rest of the season for a good amount of times. We see people just taking them, and it's the most important message is mom does the best job. Leave that baby for the mom. They have the best survival rate when they're with their parents, not with humans. So we're really not doing them any justice or helping them by taking them out of the wild if they don't need to. So call us first if you have any questions. Make sure you get the real gist of what these animals really need and not what we think they need. And then we can all do our part to make a difference for them. So at that point, let's see if we have any other questions. Okay, cool. Let me switch out this way.
All right, so I did see a couple turtle questions, so I wanted to come back to address them. So one of the turtle questions that I saw was, how does our box turtle react after we've used him in these talks? So our box turtle actually was illegally raised as a pet. So that actually brings up a really good thing to talk about. These are protected species too, so it is illegal to take these animals out of the wild. So our box turtle was illegally raised as a pet, so he is actually pretty comfortable with people. You saw he didn't really hide in his shell much when we took him out. So he is very comfortable. The reason why this is actually really bad though to take these guys out of the wild, well, there's several, but one of them is that turtles in our area during the winter, they will hibernate or they go into brumation. So if they've lived in a home where someone's cared for them, they don't know how to hibernate. So if we were to put our box turtles out in the wild, they wouldn't know what to do. They're also not as good at foraging for their own food if they've been fed by humans all along. So it's really important to keep them wild and to keep them out in the wild. Another question that we got was, how many species of turtles are there? So we do have some sea turtles that come to Long Island. We have the box turtle, that's a terrestrial species. But as for freshwater species, we have painted turtles, spotted turtles, diamondback terrapins, mud turtles, snapping turtles. I think that's it. I said painted. Yeah, I think that's it, right? I think I named them all. So we have a lot of different species of turtles, yeah. Let me see. I think that, do we have any other questions, anybody? We'll give you a few more moments to ask some questions if you'd like. And again, if you think of something after, we do look back at our comments, so we will be happy to answer them after. Or if you have questions about wildlife, you can give us a call. And we'd love for you all to share this video, because this is a great informational video on what to do. We get so many different phone calls this time of year about wildlife, so we hope that this will help answer a lot of your questions. But if you are unsure of what to do, call an organization like the Refuge. We will try to help you or get you to the right people, or call a rehabilitator in your area. You can look on the New York State DEC website. You can look for local rehabilitators. They're called wildlife rehabilitators. And many will have their information available for you to email them, or for you to give them a phone call, and they're happy to answer these questions, because that's what they're there for. They want to have wildlife survive and to strive, right? I don't think we have any questions. Do you guys have anything else to say? Asking our other educators? No. So we are very happy for you guys to have joined us today. We hope we helped with some information and maybe some confusion that you may have had. And stay tuned for Thursday's installment of Nature News. And have a good day, everybody. Bye.